Good day to you all. My name is Tatienda from Hwange Chronicles. I'm joined by a fellow engineer in the Zimbabwe Institute of Engineers conference. Please introduce yourself, Inj.
I'm Dr. Gloria Magombo, an engineer by profession and also permanent secretary in the Ministry of Energy and Power Development.
Great. Now, in your speech, you spoke a lot about engineers not partaking in projects that help the country go forward in line with the Vision 2030. Right. I wanted to find out, what do you think about the institutions and career guidance organizations? What can they do to encourage engineers to partake in such projects of national development?
Thank you so much. I think one of the challenges I was giving to the engineers is to say that we are now in an era where we have renewable energy technologies which are affordable and sustainable. It is the duty of engineers to be leaders in adoption of the technologies and also being the advocates of ensuring that when there is a capacity shortfall, they should be able to say, as part of the solution, we, the engineers, have already moved on to adopt the new technologies. So I'm happy that with government now, our program through the higher and tertiary education is Education 5.0. That education is now going beyond just theory and designing systems for career guidance where engineers are going to be looking for jobs. They should be solution providers, they should be entrepreneurs. So as part of my challenge, I was also presenting them with opportunities where they can do and come up with solutions within the energy sector as solution providers, more than being the chief complainants of the issues.
Yeah. Okay, that's fine. You mentioned a term called climate resilient infrastructure. So Zimbabwe has infrastructure already, but the key word being climate resilient infrastructure. So I wanted to find out, in your tour to other countries, as well as in your studies, what sort of projects can you encourage other fellow engineers out there to invest their knowledge into exploring some of these?
Yes, I think what is important now is when we are designing projects going into the future, we should look at the potential climate challenges we can face projects. I'll give an example of our solar. As we put in more solar into the grid, we need to design a smart grid which allows for that incorporation, but also design in some form of storage which will allow for grid stability. So gone are the days where we are just designing a grid expansion, but now we are looking at what are the resources which will be connected onto that grid, and what is it the grid needs to be able to do. So we need smarter grids than what we have, which are more rigid, which can incorporate more renewables. And also when we are designing even hydro systems, we should be looking at potential for pumped storage, where we can have a smaller reservoir somewhere where if the water levels are too low, we can be able to pump back. At design stage is cheaper than when you try and retrofit some of these solutions. But it doesn't mean that they cannot be done. So we are saying, as we design our systems for the future, let's look at all the issues and alternatives which we are bringing in, considering the fact that when we are bringing in more renewables, they are usually more intermittent, they are susceptible to climate issues and drought. And as we design, whether it's the grid or is the renewables themselves, there is that complementarity which allows for climate resilience.
Okay.
So it's a requirement now on design of projects to ensure that we incorporate a resilience issue in them.
Okay. In line with Vision 2030, there's an aspect of rural urbanization and electrifying those places. I think that's one of the key projects that the government would like to implement. I wanted to find out now on the possibility of constructing mini grids in these other areas, not only rural areas, even mining areas. If there is an investor probably out there who's interested, what key notes, what key points can they take about the possibility and the viability of constructing a mini grid, as well as the challenges that the ones we've already constructed are mainly facing currently?
No, thank you so much. I think when it comes to mini grids, we want any developer or investor or entrepreneur to come to us as government to look at the rural energy master plan. Because as you design, we want you to understand what is the full plan for the different sections. And the way we have designed it is such a way that those areas which are furthest to the grid will be electrified using mini grids, and we have identified a number of mini grids. But what we have seen in the implementation of mini grids, the first mini grids we implemented were community mini grids, which were fully funded by NGOs and yes. So those ones, they were then handed over to the communities, and some without adequate training of how to manage, how to maintain, or in the cases where people were trained, those who were trained have since left, so the mini grids end up collapsing. So what we are doing now through the Rural Electrification Fund is that they will develop the mini grids and run them and make sure that they continue operating together with the communities, which are also capacitated. And then the mini grids will also have a tariff which they have to pay to make sure that through that tariff, then they can have equipment replacement, repairs and maintenance, and all that is required to keep those systems running. But one of the areas where which we want to do, instead of just government and NGOs, we want private sector to also come into the mini grid space. So through some partnerships with UNDP, we have done some feasibility studies for mini grids, targeting having them run by themselves and by private sector. And one of the issues which was raised in the conference is that of the viability gap. Otherwise, the tariffs tends to be very high. So we want to come up with a system which comes, and is already covered in our renewable energy policy, which is the viability gap funding, where we look for partners through grants to fund part of the infrastructure to make sure that we reduce the capital costs, so that we make the mini grids much more viable without having to increase the price beyond the ability to pay of the rural communities. Remember, as government, we want rural industrialization. So we are also saying mini grids should be anchored through an industrial load. There has to be some form of productive use, whether it's an irrigation scheme or processing of the food within that environment, so that there is business, you generate the money and the capacity to pay for the community.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Inch, for having you on board. Please make a shout out before we sign out. Probably you want to shout out to someone at home or someone in the conference.
I just want to shout out again to the engineers to say, let's be part of the solution. Renewable energy technologies are now affordable. As engineers, let's lead. There's net metering, so you can put up a whole system, get yourself off the grid, and this will help our country move forward. So let's go renewable. Together we can make it.
Thank you for watching. Goodbye.